hey, everybody, the status quo is actually good. And as long as it's Democrats, things are going to be fine.
Neither side can win the presidency without the other. So they can talk about splitting or how they don't agree, but they're stuck with each other if they want to make a difference. What I find fascinating about this segment is the young people. And what occurred to me was that the older young people, 22 to 29, are overwhelmingly liberal. Whereas the younger ones, the 18 to 21, are more conservative, Republican. And when you think about it, it was during the Biden years that old conservative, messaging, we were canceled. The president was canceled. Everything that we said was taken off of social media. So their algorithms continued to be, liberal, that there was very little conservative discussion with those. But when President Trump came in, and during the campaign, when all of a sudden President Trump had a voice again, then we see kids who are more conservative because they're not being force-fed the liberal, you've got to listen to this. They have a choice. They could go conservative, they could go liberal, and they choose to go conservative. And the difference is because of the choice. And 4 years ago, the older kids didn't have the choice because the Democrats shut us down.
Well, things just keep getting worse and worse for the Democrat Party, and rightfully so. With all of this fear mongering they got going on and going after illegal immigrants and all of this grandstanding that they're doing, thinking that they're appealing to this younger base of people, because let's just be real. The reason why the Democrat Party has been so successful over the last 20, 30 years, even back to the civil rights days, is because of the youth. They convinced the 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds to go out there. Think about it. Those 18, 19-year-olds, those were the ones in the sit-ins. Those are the young people out on the streets doing all of the protesting, doing the vandalism in 2020. Those were the people out there in the summer of love. Those weren't 25-year-olds with families or 30-year-olds. Those are 18 and 19-year-olds with no jobs, no responsibilities. Life hasn't even really started for them yet. So without that youth support, as we see right now, you don't see all those Democrat protests all over the country like we saw in years past. Another reason for that is because of Doge Elon Musk going into USAID slush funds, finding that Social Security slush fund, the Treasury Department slush fund, and busting that up. Where now we got more people looking at what an NGO is, a non-government organization, and why they were funneled billions of dollars doing things like protecting and housing and hiding illegal immigrants and funding these protests and these radical outbreaks that we see happening from Chicago all the way to California. So now with President Trump's approval rating increasing, you got the lamestream media trying to fearmonger people to thinking there's this big uproar on the Republican side. Like GOP voters and MAGA voters are having buyer's remorse. That was shut down last week when CNN did a poll and found that only 2% of of Republican voters wish they would change their vote. 2%. Unlike for the Democrat Party, a whole bunch of them wish they could change their vote. And now let's fast forward it to the latest that just broke on April 23rd. And as you see right here, and we're going to get into this article briefly, but then I'm going to show you this awesome interview, this segment where you got young voters that are expressing and breaking down why Gen Z is more Republican than they were Democrat. And if you paid attention to what Judge Janine said at the beginning, she's right. I never thought about it like that. But when you had the TikToks, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all silencing conservative voices. I mean, across the board. Remember, Twitter even banned the president of the United States. Remember during COVID, what we know now to be true, all of those doctors and physicians that was sharing real information was shut down. So now you got people that are mentally jacked up from the whole pandemic thing. You got young folks who are brain warped by the Democrat Party because that's all they knew. Now, when you show them a glass of clean water versus a glass of kind of dirty water, and they could choose, they want the fresh, cleaner water. And that's what the conservative movement is compared to the Democrat movement. So I'm going to get into this article a little bit. Now I'm going to show you this clip of this amazing interview. I think you'll really enjoy it. So stick with me here. So this came out of the Western Journal. And it says, young Americans give congressional Democrats a crushing reality in new poll. And this, as you see, came out on April 23rd. Two recent polls show that Democrats are in trouble with younger voters, which has been a key demographic for them in past elections. And if the Democrats cannot hold the youth vote by a large margin, their chances of retaking the House and the Senate in 2026 narrow considerably. The Harvard Youth Poll, and this is that poll that all of the Democrats say that they see as the most reliable. The Harvard Youth Poll conducted last month among 18 to 29-year-olds found the share of young Americans who approve of congressional Democrats has dropped 19 points since the spring of 2017, from 42% all the way down to 23%. So you got less than 1 out of 4 people that agree or side with the Democrat Party. Huge drop. In contrast, Harvard reported in that same period, approval of congressional Republicans has held steady, inching up slightly from 28 to 29%. And remember something, when these polls are saying that Republicans aren't doing that good and they're saying Democrats are doing bad, Democrats are actually doing much worse than what they're reporting, and Republicans are doing much better than what they're reporting. Meanwhile, the Yale Youth Poll conducted earlier this month reported, when asked whether they would vote for the Democratic or Republican candidate in the 2026 congressional elections in their district, voters aged 22 to 29 favored the Democratic candidate by a margin of 6.4 points. But if you enjoyed this video, do me a solid, hit that like button. I'll never ask you for a Cash App or a Super Chat, but you hitting that like button, it really helps the channel. And if you aren't subscribed, subscribe. And once you do, hit the notification bell and select all. That way you'll be notified when I upload new videos. Voters aged 18 to 21 favored the Republican by a margin of 11.7 points. So as you see, you got the millennials and the Gen Zs. Remember that whole from 2019 all the way up until about 2023, up until when Elon bought X. The internet, it was an onslaught from Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of them. But now it's not working. People ain't under that spell anymore. Turning Point USA President Charlie Kirk responded to the poll, posting on social media platform X. The latest Yale Youth Poll confirms the trend we've seen at one campus after another. The youngest voters have turned sharply to the right. Yale found that 22 to 29-year-olds favored Democrats only by 6.4 points. But kids of college age, 18 to 21, lean Republican by almost 12, almost 2 to 1. The most dramatic generational political swing in history is unfolding before our eyes. And it's true. The latest youth poll, and this is a post from him. The latest youth poll, this is what he was talking about as far as with Democrats only by 6.4, but Republicans amongst 18 to 21 by almost 12. Kirk has been seeing massive crowds at his college campus rallies around the country this spring. Hello, Boise State. Another amazing stop on our college campus tour. It never gets old. And look at the crowds that Charlie Kirk is pulling in. Look at these crowds. Conservative social media influencer Colin Rugg noted regarding a rally this week at Texas A&M. Today, the packed crowd is for Charlie Kirk, and the Lib can't even get a dozen people to show up. Mind-blowing stuff. So when they showing like AOC and them doing these rallies, they're going to these deep blue areas and they're talking to the people that have always supported them. Charlie Kirk and these folks are going out, branching out, and we're going into the backyards of the blue areas, talking to those youth and just showing them a clean option versus a dirty option. 8 years ago, the larger crowd on campus would have been for the Democrat. Today, the packed crowd is for Charlie Kirk, and the Lib can't even get a dozen people to show up. There were 2 rallies at Texas A&M. One with Democrat TikToker Parker Get a Job on the left, and one with Charlie Kirk on the right. Check out the crowd difference. Un-F America over there, Charlie Kirk. And y'all, I see it online. In my demographic, you should see it's primarily people that are 40 and up. And then you got people that are between 18 and 24 that primarily are watching what I'm putting out. Between 25 and whatnot, we got some movement, but my younger crowd has been growing drastically. But let's check out this interview on News Nation that I thought really just was a perfect example of what's going on. We get a chance to hear from the youth themselves.
All right, let's get to these younger voters now, because this is interesting. Young voters have been shifting to the right. There's new insight in the Yale University youth poll, voters 18 through 21. And this poll asked who they'd support in the midterms in 26, and the Republican candidate led by a margin of 11.7%. All this on the heels of the presidential election, where we did see younger people voting for Republicans in greater numbers than they have really in decades. So we have a couple of, I guess, young experts to tell us what they think about all of this and where it's all going, as we're joined by the host of the FI Pod on Bulwark, Cameron Katsky, and also the White House correspondent for the Daily Signal, Elizabeth Mitchell. So,
and remember something, this is with the lamestream media nonstop attack against conservatives, against President Trump, against, I'm talking about telling fear-mongering, lies, misrepresenting information. With all of that, the Republicans are still doing better 2-1 amongst young voters. The swing is real.
Welcome to both of you. The on the tablet here, I just put up a couple of things. So this is just basic stuff, how young people voted in the election. So this is the 18 to 29 group, and obviously 2020 versus what we saw this time in 2024, and then the 51-47 much closer. So, Cameron, let me start with you. So this, some Democrats are really concerned about this, and they feel like they got to do something about it. What's your read on it?
I think the Republicans are very excited when people mistrust the government. They're very excited when people are uneducated, and they're excited when people aren't happy with what the government's doing. And the past couple of years have not been very promising to Gen Z. The future ahead of us is not very clear, and things are looking bad. So the right has been able to take that and say, hey, we're going to come in and shake up the system. They come in and dismantle the system and get rid of veterans benefits and cancer research and fire tons of federal workers. But they are promising something different, and young people are not satisfied. So something different sounds good.
Yeah. What's your read, Elizabeth? I'll show one more chart. This is on the tablet as well. It's hard to read, but take my word for it, because I was blown away by some of this. Support for Democrats by age, but especially the gender gap. Like you look in this area. What we saw in the last election, Elizabeth, was that I thought the gender gap was across the board, and it was sort of, but it was much wider in the younger people. So the young men, in other words, are a big problem for Democrats moving more to the right. What's going on, big picture?
Now, remember too, that guy, the young man you saw, I think we all know he obviously supports the blue team. And one thing I'm noticing about these Democrat young males, with all due respect, especially if you have a child or a loved one who is one, but you know what I'm saying is true. They're very feminine. They're really beta male-ish, and they're really always like a this. They can't just say what they mean and just, everything is toxic masculinity, and it's just very weird. Now watch the young lady have far more aggressive type of mannerisms and matter-of-fact type way of speaking than the kind of whiny ways that these beta male Democrat guys are.
Thanks for having me. I think this is a really notable shift that Kamala Harris won young women by 23 points and Trump won young men by 1 point. So there's clearly a huge gap between young men and young women. I see probably two causes for this. One, about 60% of college enrollees now are women, and we know that college campuses have become pretty liberal environments, both with professors and just the overall culture on campus. I also think that Trump did a lot to appeal to young men. He went on these podcasts that are very male-dominated, like Theo Vaughn, Joe Rogan, which really appealed to a lot of young men who maybe have felt left behind, underrepresented in the past by Democrats, who maybe have in some cases made them feel like they're just toxic for them to be masculine, or like they're oppressive to women, need to be sidelined so that women can lead because of that sort of thing.
All right. So if you're the Democrats, then you got to say, how do you stop the bleeding, Cameron, or how do you get these people back?
It's crazy how the lady was far more matter of fact talking about the male issues going on between the two parties than the quote unquote male spokesperson was. Now let's watch, and I'm willing to bet any amount of money, and I haven't watched this clip in its entirety yet. I'm willing to bet you he's going to do some beta male-ish whiny type of TDS example, and then they're going to flip it back to her. She's going to be far more pragmatic and just stay on topic and use the data. It amazes me. It amazes me. And that's why the Democrat Party is bleeding men. Young males don't relate with this guy. Young males will relate more with the lady just telling it matter-of-factly. She's not being whiny. She's talking about the data and what it is. No young male is turned on by whiny liberal males or by these quote-unquote boss chicks always telling men how they need to step to the side and let the women lead and yada, yada. Listen, nobody's trying to hear that. Do your thing, ladies. By all measures, do your thing. But you're not going to gain young male voters with that type of talk, putting them down, making them seem like who they are is somehow a bad thing, while uplifting males who want to wear dresses and reinforcing how they feel about who they are as not being confused in a mind virus. But that's just them. But a young man who sees himself as a masculine young man, a young leader, that's shunned and that's stomped on, and that's not reinforced as he's identifying with his true self. But a man that wants to identify in a dress wearing lipstick, the Democrat Party is all for that, and that's why they'll keep losing.
Right. So earlier in the show, I was joking, I was asking an old guy. But anyway, Chris Hahn used to work for like Chuck Schumer and stuff. He's a contributor with us here, and he's been around the Democratic Party for years. I was asking about this whole thing that you probably know about, that David Hogg has been pushing to kind of take down the old guard within the party, going after the old school Democrats. And here's part of what Chris said.
Look how the Democrat is dressed.
I understand where David Hogg is coming from. At the end of the day, in November of 2026, this party is going to be united in its message in putting a check on Donald Trump. David Hogg going after old school Democrats who he determines is ineffective might be a fool's errand for him in most cases.
What do you think about that, Cameron? Just where the party's going is going to be united, or is it the kind of this new school AOC and company taking down the old guard?
Well, first of all, I don't know why he was yelling. He was really loud over there. It's fine. We're just talking on the news. I would say that, look, I am not aware of David's PAC's plans, right? Leaders We Deserve. I don't know exactly what they're doing with the money, but $20 million is a lot of money for an unproven entity to be spending. That's a lot of money to be moving. So look, I am all about getting rid of the Congress people who have been around for 1 trillion years. There are people who are way too old to be making laws in both parties, by the way. The Republicans will never tackle this issue. And that's something I think it's important to highlight, is that while the Republicans are talking about how Sleepy Joe is too old to be president, which, by the way, I fully agree with, there are dinosaurs in the Republican Party that
right.
since
but they'll have Vance will probably be their nominee next time. He'll be like in his early 40s at the time. So Cameron, who do you think the Democratic nominee is next time? Is it really going to be someone like AOC?
Well, AOC right now is acting like a leader. So is Van Hollen. And there are leaders who are standing up. And the Democratic Party has to decide, are we going to act like this system has worked for everybody? Are we going to do the thing that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden did, which is say, hey, everybody, the status quo is actually good. And as long as it's Democrats, things are going to be fine. Or is someone like AOC going to come in and say, this is not working and we need to change it up?
Got to run here. Elizabeth, a quick final thought on that. Do you think conservatives would actually root for someone like that, or be kind of afraid of it?
I think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez being the face of the Democratic Party is actually a huge win for Republicans, because I think what we saw in November is that the very far left turn of the Democratic Party really hasn't resonated with the voters. And so if Democrats want to succeed in another election, they'd be best moving more to the center instead of even further left, which is where AOC will take them. Yeah,
ideology versus age. And anyway, let's continue this. This is good, guys.
Now look at this. Look at the guys. Look at the quote unquote male's face. And this is your typical Democrat male in 2025. She's dressed appropriate for the interview on News Nation. He's wearing a hoodie. He's whiny about everything. They're asking him questions about his party. TDS kicks in and he redirects it to Trump and Republicans. We're not asking about that. Republicans are doing better than Democrats right now. So, and I've noticed that people do it to me. They jump online. Oh, Brian, oh, Trump this, Trump that. It's like, whoa. Y'all don't care about MAGA. You don't listen to anything Trump says. You don't speak to anybody over here. So don't try to act like now you just know what's going on this side. No, misery loves company. So because you're unhappy with your leadership and your party is sucking and is tanking, you want to project that everybody feels that way, and it's not true. We knew what we were voting for. Matter of fact, we had a primary and we had some good candidates. DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy. We had some good people to choose from. We selected President Trump. Y'all got left with what you got told you were going to have as your option. You got old creepy Joe. They did a blackout and shut down the primaries. Then when they realized he was going to lose, booted him out, installed another unqualified puppet, and that didn't work. The voters are not as dumb as the Democrat Party think they are. The Democrat Party have become racist. They think that they are more racist and misogynist than anyone, while claiming to be the party of inclusive. They're the fastest changing cancel culture party ever known to man, ever known to this country. And I'm sick of them projecting, tired of it. So you got this young beta male on here that can't even maintain his emotions during an interview. Look at that face. And look at the young lady right there. Stayed professional, stayed on topic, dressed appropriate. Look at her backdrop. Look at his backdrop. He trying to be John Fetterman Jr. or something. I don't know. But this is why the Democrat Party bleeds males. You got men like him. Well, beta males. There's a difference between a male and a man. You got males like him going out trying to tell men how to be men. And no man is resonating with that. Like I said, they'll resonate more with that lady, not based off masculine or feminine, but because she delivered a message, she stayed on point, she looks the part. He's the male of it and was whiny, acted more feminine than she did, bounced all around and couldn't stay on topic. So when I say more attractive, meaning more willing to listen to what the individual has to say based on the presentation. Democrats have a presentation problem. They have a messaging problem, but they feel like it's not the messaging, it's the listener. The listener has the problem, and that's why they'll keep losing. But hey, if you stayed in there with me this long, I really do appreciate you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And like always, if you haven't, hit that like video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, tell me what you think. Other than that, I'm Brian Maxwell saying I look forward to seeing you at the top. Make sure y'all stay safe. Be great. Over and out, y'all.